We're here today on Воробьёвы Горы, or Sparrow Hills in English, to behold one of Moscow's most recognizable sights. And no, I'm not talking about the never-ending gray skies of the winter months. I'm talking about MGU.
MGU, Moskovsky Государственный университет, or MSU, Moscow State University, as it's known in English, is the most prestigious institute of higher learning in Russia. So let's find out a bit more about this titanic structure and some points of interest from the campus. But first, a brief history of the university as an organization. The first building of Moscow State University was actually on Red Square, where the State Historical Museum now stands. Sometime later, it moved to another building in the center, where it remained until after the Second World War. At this point in time, it became clear that there was a need for an expansion of facilities to cope with the growing influx of students. The glorious Soviet future wasn't going to be built with only a trickle of specialists, after all.
I want to touch upon this church behind me. At the time of its construction in the early 1950s,
MGU was actually outside of Moscow, in the village of Vorobyovo. The village continued its existence up until the end of the construction phase, when it was demolished and all the residents relocated to new apartments in the city.
All that's left of Vorobyovo is this church right here, Храм Живоначальной Троицы на Воробьёвых горах, or Church of the Life-Giving Trinity on Sparrow Hills. Here in front of the main building, we have a fountain, which clearly isn't working. It's the winter time. And it has never worked as far as I can remember. So I suppose that makes it less of a fountain and more of a reflecting pool, punctuated by that decrepit plumbing there in the middle. But anyway,
on both sides are busts of famous Russian scientists in what is known appropriately enough as the Alley of Scientists. Luminosov, the university's namesake, is here, as well as Mendeleev, Timiryazev, and others.
Okay, I realize this is kind of totally unrelated to MGU exactly, but I have to highlight the fact that the ground surrounding this area on both sides is just a basically solid sheet of ice. One of my favorite things of the snow removal process in Moscow is how often they don't do it, and then it just turns into this. Oh well. While the Kremlin and Red Square are more famous spots, and St. Basil's Cathedral is perhaps the most iconic building in the entire country, MGU still looms large over the city, both figuratively and literally. I'm not sure if you can see it up there on the tower back there behind me, but that is a very large mechanical clock. I don't remember if it's the largest in the world or in Europe or just all of Russia, but it is over 9 meters in diameter, give or take, maybe a little bit more, maybe just a little bit less. Don't remember off the top of my head. It's big. But my favorite thing about that is actually not that it gives you the time. That is quite useful if you're out walking around here. But it's actually the fact that on other towers in that direction, and then on the sides of those towers, there are other large mechanical faces that tell you not just the time, but also the air pressure and the temperature, which is kind of neat. Inmates from the Gulag forced labor camps were involved in the construction of the main building here.
When construction reached later stages, they were actually housed on the upper floors because it was easier to guard a single staircase and got rid of the need to transport them each day. It's rumored that the secret Metro 2 ran out from the Kremlin to somewhere under the university before continuing on its mysterious way. These rumors come from the fact that bomb shelters definitely exist underground here, and the full extent of the university's underground system isn't documented anywhere. As you walk around the campus, you'll pass areas like this one, fenced off once or even twice, with razor wire adornments to further drive home the "keep out" message. Ventilation shafts can be seen coming out of the ground if you look through the fence at certain angles, or simply open Google Maps and choose the satellite view.
For bored students and citizens living under a regime not well known for its transparency, it's the perfect backdrop against which to project wild theories. Now, this is my favorite part of the campus, largely because it's the easiest to overlook.
It's a baseball stadium left to decay, a bit of an odd duck in Russia, where the sport is not played. The stadium opened in 1989, built on behalf of Shigechi Matsume, the then rector of the University of Tokai in Japan. Matsume believed that the United States and the Soviet Union needed to reach better levels of mutual understanding, and that by practicing baseball in Russia and other Eastern European countries, it would better help them grasp an aspect of the American mentality. He also pushed to have baseball included in the Olympics, so it's safe to say the guy was a fan of the sport. Anyway, Tokai University had many connections with Moscow State University, and after gathering the needed finances, Matsume got the stadium built. If you look at its position in the athletics complex of the university, it's clearly an afterthought, shoehorned in, and I wonder if it will ever find use or just continue to fall into disrepair, like a number of other buildings across the campus.
Now, I remember 10 years ago when I first discovered this part of MGO, people were actually out there playing a baseball game, and I was kind of surprised because it's baseball in Russia. But yeah, it was 10 years ago. I can say for a fact that in the last 5 or 6 years, there has been absolutely no movement in the stadium whatsoever, and I think the general condition of it speaks for that pretty well. Also, if you look over there, you can see the observatory here, which I'm assuming when it was built, being further out of the city would have been somewhat useful, but with, well, cloud cover and then just insane light pollution here in Moscow, I can't imagine they get much use of it anymore.
The needle looks quite small from all the way down here, but in reality, it's quite large. The star from side to side is 7.5 meters, and if we figure in the laurels, the diameter of the whole construction is 9.5 meters wide. The entire needle is 60 meters from top to bottom, which was absurdly large for the time of its construction in the 1950s. The needle that you see atop the building was not the initial plan, however. So what else could have topped MGO? Well, the likeliest contender was a giant statue of Lenin, followed by a statue of the famous academic who founded the university, Luminosov. This statue actually exists and later found residency elsewhere on the grounds of the university. Or a classic Soviet theme of workers and sheaves of wheat. A statue atop the building would have, however, made the entire construction, in effect, an ungodly pedestal. As the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had been completed before MGO, the Soviets had a little experience under their belts. So they opted for a much more practical needle, though it did present its own fair share of difficulties. The building has a roughly X shape when viewed from above, with the tallest section clearly in the middle. This part of the building is devoted to educational purposes, with auditoriums and classrooms. The other wings are all dedicated to living quarters, split into areas that are dormitories for students and others that are apartments for professors. When the building was constructed, the Soviets aimed to include all the necessary amenities within this architectural behemoth. Laundry, cafeteria, reading rooms with armchairs, pianos, gyms, a pool, even shops. Legend has it that some students even made bets to see who could go the longest without leaving. One such story states that a student entered on his first day, only to leave years later when he finally had his diploma. Now, unfortunately, we cannot enter the building to have a look at the interior, which is somewhat logical. It's a university and we're not students, nor do we work here. However, if we could have a look inside, we'd find that it's largely been untouched. The same furniture and parquet flooring that was in place when construction finished is still there, preserved through Lord knows which combination of chemicals. According to Russian news sources, hundreds of millions of rubles have been earmarked for renovations over the last decade, but based on pictures and a decent amount of commentary on the Russian social media site VK, it would appear that money rarely, if ever, is applied to its intended use.
One last callback to earlier in the video. Remember when I said that there was a statue of Lomonosov that they wanted to put on top of the building and they decided to put it elsewhere on the campus? Well, here he is, the founder of the university behind the back entrance. Now, that's not really a bad thing. most students and people going in and out of the main building use the back entrance, so more people see him back there. But one other fun little fact is that if you look over that way, we've got the chemistry department and the physics department over there. Now, for a long time, there was a debate as to which department Luminosov was standing closer to. Sometime in the last 10 years, they used some rather modern technologies to figure it out. And I do believe he's a little bit closer to the physics department. Behind me are the Botanical Gardens of MGO, which are clearly not working now. It's the winter time. But in the springtime, you can buy a ticket, come in and take a look at the flowering bushes and all that stuff. However, that's not really the most interesting part. We got to go that way for this. This right here behind me, although it just looks like storage right now, is actually my favorite part of the Botanical Gardens here at MGO. In the autumn time, this is actually a little shop where all of the fruits, mainly apples and pears that they grow in the orchards here in the Botanical Gardens, that you can actually buy them. The price is about 50 to 150 rubles per kilogram, which really isn't all that much. But the best part is that the varieties that they grow here are, I think, maybe special hybrids that they've created themselves. Regardless, you can't find them in any of the shops around the city. So it's a really interesting variety that you can pick up and enjoy. Also worth mentioning, but not really my thing, is the fact that not too far down from here in the springtime, they have another small shop where they sell seedlings and plants that you can take out to your dacha and plant if you have such a thing. I'm currently walking along Michurinsky Prospect, which is the edge of the university, the old university campus on the, I suppose, west side. You want to think of it like this? But I actually want to point out a few things here. It's a rather new building that they've put up for information technology in the last few years. Listen to it. Pay attention. Look at all the green grass right here. Now, this is not connected to the university, but Moscow, all the homes in Moscow and in Russia are heated at thermal electric stations. Anyway, and the heat is all hot water that gets pumped out through giant underground pipes. And those giant underground pipes are very easy to, I guess, identify, locate, because in the wintertime, hey, the ground is very soft, and well, the grass is still growing. So yeah, that is very unusual for January, relatively speaking, but at the same time, very, very common here in Moscow. Now, we're coming up to the other part that I wanted to talk about, which is over here. Now, there's just two of them right here, but this is the beginning of a very long line of, I guess, two lines technically, and then there in the middle, and then further on, kind of on both sides, apple trees. We were talking about apples in the orchards of the Botanical Gardens, but here on the edge, they actually planted a ton of apple trees as well, and they're all free. So in the autumn, you will see a lot of people come to this region to kind of just pick apples and take them home and do whatever they want with them. I mean, I know some people might be hesitant because Michurinsky Prospect is kind of a busy road, so maybe not the best environment for apples, but what, you know, free is free. And finally, the last thing I wanted to point out here is right over here. These, and I'm going to sort of stick us through the fence here, so get ready. You can see in there there are quite a few trees, little ones further on. And the shed is kind of blocking the view, but it goes on over that way as well. So you can see that there are quite a few trees in there that, well, they can pick apples and pears from, among other things. Here we have a better view maybe. They even have ladders out because they have been working probably the last few days getting ready for, I don't know what trees they are, and I'm not knowledgeable on that in any sort of meaningful way. But yeah, right there. Take a look, and you can see there's even somebody up in a ladder right now. And I'm pretty sure I saw somebody out. Yeah, two people out there kind of surveying. So a lot of trees for them to prepare for the coming season.
This is MGOS Большой Gazon, or Big Yard in English, a tract of untouched land that is ostensibly a park but really just acts as a green space, or white one, depending on the season. You'll find people walking about it with dogs at all times of the year, with others running or lounging on benches in the summer while they watch young squirrels frolic, or cross-country skiing the perimeter in the winter. There is no infrastructure here, aside from benches and small garbage cans lining the foot-beaten paths. No electric lights, no kiosks selling snacks, no asphalt or even gravel. And it's delightful exactly for these reasons. There's so much more to show and tell about Moscow State University, so rest assured that when spring finally makes its way around, I'll head back to show you how the campus looks in another season, and to share more sights and stories about it with you. Until then, hit the subscribe button, leave your questions and comments down below, and stay tuned to Russia in Context for more videos like this one.